Dust spiraled up from the dry ground as Clara Bennett stepped off the wagon. Her boots hit the earth with a soft thud, but inside her chest, her heart struck like hooves pounding across a plain. She clutched her small satchel close. Everything she owned was inside. Everything she hoped to forget was behind her. Hawthorne Ranch stretched wide under the late afternoon sun, fences running long and straight, the fields dotted with cattle. It was larger than any place she'd ever been trusted to care for. A group of men worked near a half-built barn, and at their center stood a man who could have been carved out of the land itself. Broad shoulders, sun-browned skin, a jaw set with determination and a gaze that seemed to weigh the world. Logan Hawthorne. The landowner. Clara took a slow breath and walked toward him. Each step felt heavier than the last. She had told herself she could do this, earn wages, keep her head down, and disappear. She didn't need kindness or trust. Just safety. Just distance from the life she ran from. Logan noticed her long before she reached him. He lowered the heavy timber he'd been lifting and wiped his brow. As she came near, his deep-set eyes studied her, curiosity mixed with something she couldn't quite read. "You're the one a-skinned for work?" he asked, voice roughened by sun and grit. "Yes, sir," she replied quickly. "I can cook, clean, mend, and I learned fast. I need a chance." One of the ranch hands snickered under his breath, muttering something about how the ranch wasn't a place for little butterflies. Heat rose in Clara's cheeks, but Logan didn't look away from her. "You scared of hard labor?" he asked. Clara straightened her shoulders, trying to appear braver than she felt. "No, sir." "That so?" Logan picked up a long wooden beam, thick, solid, and heavy, and angled it into her arms. She tried to brace under the unexpected weight. For a heartbeat, she thought she could manage it. But then gravity had its say, pulling the beam low, nearly slipping from her grasp. She gasped, struggling as her boots dug into the dirt. "It's too hard and too big for me." Logan stepped close enough for her to smell cedar and leather and dust, close enough that his shadow covered her from the sun. "Hold it with both hands," he instructed softly but firmly. His hand brushed hers as he helped to reposition her grip. "Don't let fear take your strength." For a moment, she forgot the beam entirely. All she noticed was the steadiness of his touch and the way his voice eased the panic fluttering in her chest. She swallowed and nodded. With both hands, she tightened her grip and lifted again. It still felt impossible, but less so. Logan's eyes narrowed not in frustration, but in respect. "Good. Follow me?" Clara followed, lumber clutched to her chest, arms burning. It felt like walking miles, though it couldn't have been more than a minute. When she finally set the timber down where he motioned, her knees almost gave out from relief. The other hands watched, some amused, some surprised. But Logan didn't let their stares linger on her failure or struggle. "You've got fire," he said. "Most folks give up before they even try." Clara blinked up at him, breathless. "I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice," he replied. "Some folks choose to quit." "You didn't." She didn't know how to respond. Compliments felt dangerous, made her feel seen. And she was here to stay invisible. As the men returned to hammering boards into place, Logan gave her a quick tour of the bunkhouse, the kitchen, the well. With each step, Clara tried to calm the nerves prickling under her skin. Every sound, a horse snort, a hammer strike, made her flinch before she caught herself. "You've been around trouble," Logan finally said, not as a question. Clara stiffened. "I just need work, Mr. Hawthorne," she whispered. "That's all." He studied her with that unreadable expression again, then nodded slowly. "Then work is what you'll get." She exhaled, pulling air deep into her lungs as if it were her first breath in days. The ranch didn't feel safe yet, but perhaps safe enough. As Logan walked away to rejoin his men, Clara allowed herself one tiny thought, quiet and reckless. Maybe this place could be the beginning of something new, even if she had no idea what that something might be. The first 2 days on Hawthorne Ranch felt like a test Clara wasn't sure she'd pass. Every chore pushed her to her limits, scrubbing floors before sunup, hauling buckets of water until her palms blistered, mending saddle straps under the watchful eyes of men who doubted her every move, but she refused to falter. She had endured worse things than aching muscles. At night, she lay in the small room. The cook kindly offered her a narrow bed, thin sheets, and a single candle flickering against the walls. Each creak of the floorboards or distant hoofbeat sent her heart racing. Sleep came only in scraps. The nightmares came in full, yet come morning. Clara still rose before dawn. Logan Hawthorne noticed. He wasn't a man who paid close attention to strangers. He had more land than patience most days. But there was something about Clara Bennett that caught his eye and didn't let go. She moved like someone who expected a hand to grab her at any second. Once, when a rope cracked too loud against a post, she dropped to her knees and shielded her head. Logan had stopped mid-stride, shock flashing across his features. She apologized too many times, then hurried away before he could ask a single question. He knew the look in her eyes. Fear that had roots. So instead of pressing her, he watched. Late one morning, he found her repairing the barn door hinges. Her stitches along the leather straps earlier had been tight and neat. Now her careful hands worked with the same precision. She didn't notice his shadow fall across the wood until he spoke. "You been staying in that room behind the kitchen?" Logan asked. Clara nearly dropped the hammer. "Yes, the cook said I could, if it's all right with you." "It is." Logan crossed his arms, leaning against the post. "You work hard. I respect that." She blinked, startled. Compliments still felt like traps. "You don't talk much," he added. Clara kept her eyes trained on the hinge. "Talking gets people in trouble." Logan raised a brow. "That your experience?" Her silence was answer enough. The hammer paused in her hand, her knuckles whitening. For a moment, Logan thought she might tell him something, anything. But the wall inside her snapped shut, and she shook her head. "I'm grateful you hired me, Mr. Hawthorne," she whispered. "I just want to earn my keep." Logan stared at her a moment longer, then nodded. "You call me Logan. Everyone does." She finally looked at him, then really looked. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp but not cruel. Strength lived in the set of his shoulders, but so did restraint. For the first time since arriving, she felt a flicker of trust, a dangerous thing. The other ranch hands weren't blind to Logan's attention. Jared, one of the older cowboys, leaned against a fence rail while Clara gathered feed that afternoon. "You got Mr. Hawthorne taking an interest," he said with a smirk. "Don't know what you're hiding, sweetheart, but secrets don't stay buried long around here." Clara's grip tightened on the sack of feed. "I'm not hiding anything," she lied. Jared chuckled. "We'll see." His stare lingered too long, crawling under her skin like the wrong kind of touch. Logan's voice cut through the tension like a steel blade. "Jared," he warned from behind them, "you're needed at the south fence." The ranch hand stiffened, tipped his hat, and left. Clara stood frozen, pulse hammering. "Don't mind him," Logan said, his voice softer. "Some men think fear gives them power." "It doesn't," Clara nodded, unable to find words. "Clara." Logan stepped closer, careful as if approaching a wild maar. "You're safe here." Her breath shook. She wanted to believe him, but promises had failed her before. "I appreciate your kindness," she said, voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. "Truly, but you don't need to worry about me. I'll stay out of trouble." Logan didn't look convinced. His brows drew together as if he wanted to say more, ask more. But he didn't push. Instead, he tipped his hat. "We all got something to outrun," he murmured. "When you're ready to stop running, you come find me." Clara stood rooted as he walked away. His footsteps fading. Safe. The word echoed through her. She didn't know if anywhere in the world could truly offer that. But Hawthorne Ranch was trying. And for the first time in a very long while, Clara wondered, what if she dared to stay? By the end of Clara's first week at Hawthorne Ranch, the sky had turned the color of copper each evening, and the crew had grown used to seeing her small figure moving from task to task without complaint. But acceptance? That was another matter. Ranch life had an order. The hands respected strength proven through action, through years of back-breaking work under the sun. Clara, with her quiet ways and calm, careful steps, didn't fit the picture, and gossip filled every space where work paused. She ain't tough enough. Logan's just pitying her. Maybe she's hiding something. No woman runs this far for no reason. Mark my words, she'll be gone before the month's up. Clara heard it all even when they thought she didn't. Every whispered jab felt like a needle. She kept her head down, kept working. If she let them see the pain, they won. Still, the doubt seated deep inside her. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong anywhere. One afternoon, as she swept the porch outside the bunkhouse, the sound of playful laughter drifted from behind her. Two young ranch hands, Colt and Dawson, were taking a break under the shade of an oak tree. Bet she doesn't last long, Colt said, flicking a pebble across the yard. She's soft. Dawson snorted. Logan's only keeping her 'cause she's easy on the eyes. Clara froze. Colt's grin widened. Think she's sweet on him? Maybe she's trying to charm her way into the big house. Their laughter stung sharper than any thorn. She straightened slowly, sweeping with stiff strokes, trying to block out their voices. But humiliation pooled hot and sticky beneath her skin. The harder she fought it, the faster her breath came. Logan stepped around the corner just in time to catch the tail end of their cruelty. His jaw tightened like a storm cloud forming. You boys got so much energy to flap your mouths, he said, voice low and dangerous. I'll assume you're a skin for more chores. Colt and Dawson sat bolt upright. We were just joking, boss. Logan's stare could cut stone. Then you can joke while mucking out the stables. Double time. Their faces fell. But you heard me. The two men hurried off, grumbling. Silence settled again, but Clara's chest still ached. You okay? Logan asked gently. She nodded too quickly. Yes, I'm fine. That a lie? He pressed. Clara hesitated. She wasn't used to anyone noticing the truth beyond her words. She swallowed, eyes fixed on the porch floorboards. I didn't come here to be a burden, she whispered, or to cause trouble. I just don't want to stand out. Logan walked up the steps and leaned against the post next to her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But he didn't crowd her. He simply stood there, a steady presence she didn't realize she'd needed. Everyone stands out for something, he said. Some folks for their mouth, others for their courage. Clara shook her head. Courage? I've seen plenty of folks who look strong but quit the minute life turns against them, Logan replied. You didn't quit? His words hit deeper than he probably intended. They rattled loose memories she tried hard to bury, cold nights behind locked doors. Orders barked at her like she was livestock, a ring forced onto her finger. The weight of a future she didn't choose. And you didn't run from the work, Logan added. You ran toward it. Clara let out a shaky breath. She didn't fully believe him. Not yet. But a part of her wanted to. Thank you, she murmured. Logan tipped his hat and offered a faint smile. Don't thank me. Just keep proving those fools wrong. As he walked away, Clara stared at the horizon. The sun dipped lower, casting long golden rays across the ranch, the kind of light that made even broken things look beautiful. Maybe the gossip would never stop. Maybe some would always doubt her, but Logan Hawthorne had seen something different, and that sliver of belief, small as it was, felt like the beginning of belonging. That night, as she lay with her hands folded beneath her head, Clara realized she was no longer counting the days until she could leave. Instead, for the first time, she was wondering how long she might stay. The evening sky had begun to darken with an unsettling gray, clouds thickening and rolling in like a herd of restless cattle. Clara was in the barn, stacking hay bales while the wind whispered through the open doors. The air smelled electric ozone mixed with dust and livestock. Something about the sudden stillness made her spine prickle. "Looks like a storm's coming," Logan said, stepping into the barn, his coat flapping in the rising wind. He glanced at the sky, his expression serious. "We need to secure the barn before it's too late." Clara nodded, pushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I can help," she offered, though her voice wavered slightly. Storms had never been her ally. They reminded her of nights spent hiding from a past she wanted to forget. Logan handed her a rope. "Tie the bales down. Make sure they're firm." His eyes lingered on her hands, strong but small, as they worked the coarse rope around the hay. "Don't be afraid to ask for help." "I'm not afraid," she said quickly, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. The first drops of rain fell in splashes that made the wooden barn floor slick. Clara shivered. She had never learned to love storms. They always brought chaos. But Logan's presence steadied her, a calm in the middle of the brewing tempest. Suddenly, a gust of wind ripped through the barn doors, slamming one against the wall. A bale stack wobbled dangerously. Without thinking, Clara lunged to steady it, but the stack teetered, threatening to crush her. "Clara!" Logan's voice roared over the wind. He reached her side in a heartbeat, his hands gripping hers around the rope. Together, they stabilized the falling hay, their bodies pressed close, balancing against the force of nature. Rain soaked through her hair, and the barn smelled like wet straw and earth, mingled with his familiar scent of cedar and leather. For a moment, time slowed. The storm raged outside, but inside that barn, there was only him, solid, sure, and alive, and her frantic pulse. Clara's hand shook as she held the rope, and Logan's presence steadied her like a tether to safety. "You're doing fine," he said, voice low and steady. "Keep it tight." Her lips parted to respond, but words tangled in her throat. She realized she had never been protected like this, not just from the storm, but from herself, from fear. His closeness was a shield she hadn't known she needed. The wind slammed the barn doors again, louder this time, and the rafters groaned ominously. Clara's heart thumped in her chest. Lightning flashed, illuminating the storm outside, followed by the roll of thunder that shook the barn floor. She clung to the rope and to Logan, who didn't let go, even as she felt herself weakening. "Almost done," he muttered, tightening the final knot. "Just a few more, then you're safe." When the last bale was secured, Logan released her hands, and she stumbled back, soaked, shaking, and breathless. He brushed a strand of hair from her wet face, but his hand lingered on her cheek for a heartbeat too long. Clara's pulse jumped for reasons she didn't understand, her chest tightening like the storm outside had entered her very bones. "You did well," Logan said softly, his voice barely audible over the fading rain. "Stronger than I thought?" Clara swallowed, trying to catch her breath. I couldn't have done it without you?" Logan shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You could have. I just made sure you didn't get hurt." For the first time, Clara felt more than just relief. She felt the thrill of connection, a spark she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The storm was leaving, but something had awakened inside her. Something she wasn't ready to name. As the rain tapered into gentle drizzles, Logan opened the barn doors and looked out at the wet, shining fields. Clara followed his gaze. Everything looked renewed. washed clean by the storm, the land glistening under the soft light of the setting sun that peeked through parting clouds. "You handled yourself well," he said again. "Don't forget that." Clara nodded, still trembling, but this time not entirely from fear. There was pride mixed with something warmer, a quiet acknowledgement that she was capable of more than she ever imagined. For the first time since arriving at Hawthorne Ranch, she felt a sliver of belonging, not because anyone had told her she could, but because she had survived, and survived alongside someone who truly cared. The storm had passed, but Clara knew this night would linger in her memory for a long time, a reminder that strength and courage could be found even in the fiercest of tempests. The next morning, the ranch glimmered under a clean, washed sky. The storm had left puddles that reflected the towering fences and scattered hay bales, making Hawthorne Ranch look almost magical. Clara moved carefully along the paths, mopping up the lingering wet mud and trying to shake off the memory of the previous night. Her muscles ached pleasantly, a reminder that she had faced the storm and lived. But peace, she knew too well, was fragile. A dust cloud appeared on the horizon, small at first, then growing larger with each heartbeat. Horses kicked up earth as a rider approached, tense and deliberate. Clara froze. Something inside her tightened like a trap. Memories she had tried to bury months, even years of running surfaced unbidden. Threats whispered in the dark. Chains of promises she hadn't chosen. A life forced upon her. The rider dismounted abruptly, revealing a man in a wide-brimmed hat, his boots scuffed, his expression cold and commanding. Clara recognized him immediately, the man whose shadow had haunted her dreams. Malcolm Gray, the very person she had fled to escape an arranged marriage and a life filled with cruelty. "Clara Bennett," he said, voice like a whip cracking in the calm morning air. "You've got some nerve leaving. Hand over what belongs to me." Clara's heart pounded. Her first instinct was to run, as she had done so many times before. But Hawthorne Ranch was different. She was not alone. "Not here," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." Malcolm laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can scare me, girl? You owe me everything. And now you'll pay." Before Clara could react further, Logan Hawthorne emerged from the barn, his coat flapping slightly in the breeze. He moved toward them, calm but commanding. When Logan stood before Malcolm, there was no question who held power. "Step away from her," Logan said, voice low and dangerous. "Or I'll make sure you regret ever setting foot on this land." Malcolm's grin faltered. Logan's reputation for toughness was well known. He wasn't a man to challenge lightly. But Malcolm's greed and arrogance kept him rooted. "She's mine," Malcolm insisted. "And you're a fool to think you can protect her." Logan's eyes narrowed. "No, she's hers. You have no claim here. Leave now, or I'll remove you myself." Clara felt something shift inside her. Watching Logan face down the man who had controlled her for so long ignited a spark she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't powerless anymore. "Clara," Logan said softly, just enough for her to hear, "stay behind me." She did. Heart hammering, she realized the truth she had avoided for months. She was no longer running. Not from fear, not from the past. Malcolm's posture stiffened. He realized Logan meant every word. Finally, with a sneer, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he spat, then mounted his horse and rode away, the dust swallowing him as quickly as he had arrived. Clara's knees weakened, and Logan reached out to steady her. His hand touched hers, grounding her. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded, swallowing hard. I think so. Thanks to you." "You didn't need me," he said, though his hand lingered on hers for a heartbeat. "You stood your ground. That's the strength I saw from the start." Clara looked at him, a mix of gratitude and something warmer forming in her chest. He had defended her not because she was weak, but because she deserved it. Not because he owned her trust, but because she had earned his respect. "I never thought I'd have someone stand up for me like that," she whispered, eyes glistening. "Not in a long time." Logan smiled faintly, a shadow of humor and admiration crossing his features. "You don't have to be alone anymore. Not here. Not ever." Clara let her breath out slowly, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The past had arrived, tried to claim her, but it had failed. She was safe. For now. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life not dictated by fear. As they walked back to the barn together, the wind picking up leaves in playful spirals around their boots, Clara realized that this land, this ranch, and this man Logan Hawthorne were the beginning of something entirely new, something worth holding on to. The evening settled quietly over Hawthorne Ranch, the sky painted in dusky shades of orange and purple. Clara lingered near the barn, brushing hay from her sleeves, still trembling slightly from the confrontation with Malcolm Gray earlier that day. Though the threat had passed, the fear that had lodged in her chest for years was only beginning to loosen its grip. Logan approached, holding a lantern in one hand, its warm glow illuminating his strong features. The light danced across his eyes, revealing an intensity that made Clara's heart skip unexpectedly. "You've been working late," he said softly, not as a reprimand but as an observation. I wanted to make sure everything was in order," Clara replied, trying to mask the nervous flutter in her voice. She knew she looked small and vulnerable in the shadows of the barn, but she also knew Logan didn't see her that way. He stepped closer, the lantern casting long shadows behind him. "Clara," he began, but then hesitated, as if weighing every word. The pause made her pulse quicken. "I wanted to say, thank you," she whispered, barely above the rustling of straw. "For today, for standing up to him, for protecting me." Logan's gaze softened, and he lowered the lantern slightly. "You don't need to thank me. You could have handled it yourself. You did most of it, actually." Clara blinked, surprised. I didn't feel like I could." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the fringe of her sleeve. "But having you there made a difference. It made me feel like I could stand, that I could finally be safe." The lantern light illuminated a flicker of vulnerability in Logan's eyes. "You've got more strength than you give yourself credit for," he said. His voice was quiet, almost a murmur, but it carried weight. "And maybe that's why I respect you so much. You fight even when you think you can't." Clara swallowed hard, emotions threatening to spill over. I haven't trusted anyone in a long time," she admitted. Not since my past. I never imagined anyone would see me for more than the mistakes I ran from, but you see me differently." Logan's hand hovered near hers for a moment, not touching, just close enough to make her breath catch. "Clara," he said, steady and deliberate, "I see you. I see your courage, your determination, and the way you never give up, even when life tries to break you. I respect that more than you know." She lifted her gaze to meet his. The lantern reflected in his eyes, warm and steady, and for a heartbeat, the world outside, the barn, the ranch, even the shadows of her past felt distant. I don't know if I can ever stop running completely," she confessed, voice trembling. "But I want to try. With you." Logan's lips curved in a faint, reassuring smile. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just take it one step, one day at a time. And I'll be here. No judgments, no expectations. Just—" He paused, letting the words linger. "Just someone who cares." Clara's chest tightened, and she realized that for the first time in years, The thought of trusting someone didn't feel terrifying, it felt like a lifeline. She nodded slowly, taking a small step closer to him. I think I can do that, she whispered. Logan tilted his head slightly, studying her with that quiet intensity that made her feel both exposed and safe. Then he held the lantern higher, illuminating the barn around them, the hay, the worn wooden beams, and the space they shared. Good, he said softly. That's all I ask. No more running. Not here. Not from me. Clara felt warmth flood her chest, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something tender she had long thought impossible. The night was still around them, the lantern's light casting gentle shadows, but for once she didn't feel small in the darkness. She felt seen. She felt protected. She felt alive. For the first time in years, Clara allowed herself a small, cautious smile. And as she returned it to Logan, she realized that maybe this trust, this bond, this quiet understanding under lantern light was the beginning of something she had never dared to dream before, something lasting, something real. The morning air was crisp, with a hint of frost along the edges of the fields. Clara walked toward the barn, her hands gripping a bundle of clean rags. She had almost forgotten the adrenaline of yesterday's storm, replaced by a quiet confidence she was still learning to trust. But peace, she had learned, was often fleeting dot by the time she reached the barn. A distant cloud of dust on the horizon caught her eye. Her stomach twisted. Malcolm Gray. He had returned, and this time he wasn't alone. Mounted behind him were two men, each with a look that screamed trouble. Clara's pulse quickened. She wanted to run, but years of fleeing had taught her that escape was only temporary relief. She steadied herself and ran to the house, where Logan was already preparing for the inevitable confrontation. "Malcolm's back," she said, voice taut. "He's not alone." Logan's jaw tightened. "Then we face it together." He ran a hand over his face briefly, then looked at her. "Stay close. I won't let him harm you." Clara nodded. Something deep inside her stirred, a courage she hadn't known she possessed. Not just fear of Malcolm, but fear of letting her own life be dictated by terror any longer. The men rode up to the barn, spurs clinking, eyes sharp with greed. Malcolm dismounted first, his expression a mixture of rage and entitlement. "I told you this isn't over, Clara," he barked. "You belong to me." Clara's knees wobbled, but she planted herself firmly, meeting his gaze. "No," she said clearly. "I belong to no one but myself." Logan stepped forward, placing himself between her and Malcolm. His presence was solid, a shield of unwavering strength. "I warned you," Logan said, voice like steel. "Hawthorne Ranch is not a place for threats. Leave or face the consequences." Malcolm sneered. "You think you can stop me?" Logan didn't answer with words. Instead, he gestured to the ranch hands who had gathered behind him, forming a protective line. Clara realized that she wasn't alone, not today, not ever again. As the tension mounted, Clara's mind cleared. She remembered Logan's words, the confidence he had shown in her during the storm, during the first confrontation. And for the first time, she stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "Malcolm Gray," she said, meeting him eye to eye. "I am done running. Leave me alone. Leave this land alone. You have no power here. Not over me. Not over my life." Malcolm's face contorted in anger, but there was uncertainty now. Clara could see it in his eyes, doubt that maybe he no longer held control. Logan's hand rested on the butt of his revolver, but he didn't need to draw it. Clara's voice, steady and resolute, carried more authority than any weapon. Malcolm's men exchanged nervous glances. Finally, Malcolm spat on the ground, muttering threats under his breath, and mounted his horse. "This isn't the end," he growled, then turned and rode away, the dust swallowing him once more. Clara exhaled, her chest heaving with a mixture of relief and exhilaration. She had faced her fear. She had stood her ground. She had spoken her truth. Logan stepped beside her, his hand brushing hers briefly. That was impressive, he admitted, his eyes reflecting pride and admiration. You didn't just stand there. You confronted him. You claimed your life back. Clara let a small, victorious smile spread across her face. I didn't want to be afraid anymore, she said softly. And I realized I didn't have to be. Not with you here. Not with this ranch. Logan's expression softened. You've got more courage than most men I know, he said. His gaze held hers for a long moment, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged through trials and danger. As they walked back toward the barn together, the morning sun breaking through scattered clouds, Clara felt something shift inside her. The fear that had haunted her for years, the shadows of a past she thought she could never escape, had been challenged. And for the first time, she felt truly free, not because the threat had passed, but because she had found her own strength, and because she had found someone willing to stand beside her through storms, through threats, and through every shadow that life dared to cast her way. For Clara, this was more than safety. This was a beginning. The morning after Malcolm Gray's departure, Hawthorne Ranch glimmered under the soft light of sunrise. Dew sparkled on the grass, the fence posts cast long shadows, and the barn, now fully repaired, stood proud and steadfast. Clara walked along the paths, her boots crunching softly over the frost-hardened earth, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time, she didn't glance over her shoulder. She didn't anticipate betrayal, danger, or the weight of a past that threatened to consume her. Logan walked beside her, his presence a quiet reassurance, steady as the land itself. Looks like the barn held up well through last night's wind, Clara remarked, smiling faintly. She reached out and ran her hand along the smooth timber. I never thought I'd feel proud of something I built. Logan nodded, his eyes sweeping over the structure with satisfaction. It's sturdy, just like you. His tone was teasing, but there was a depth of sincerity that made her pulse quicken. Clara laughed softly, brushing hay from her sleeves. I've learned a lot in a short time. About work. About myself. About what it feels like to belong somewhere. Logan looked at her, the corners of his mouth turning up in a rare, gentle smile. Belonging is earned, and you've done more than that. You've claimed your place here. They walked together toward the paddocks where the ranch hands were already tending to the morning chores. The men greeted Clara with nods and respectful smiles. No more whispering, no more doubting. She had proven herself not just in labor, but in courage. As they reached the fence line, Logan paused and turned to her. You know, he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear, I never expected anyone to stay. Most people can't handle the work, the responsibility, the land. But you surprised me. Clara's cheeks warmed. I didn't do it for you, she said softly, though her heart fluttered at the look in his eyes. I did it for me. To prove I could. To prove I wasn't afraid anymore. Logan took a step closer. And now? His gaze softened, searching hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. Now, Clara whispered, I want to stay. Not just for the work, but for this. For us. A quiet moment stretched between them, filled only by the soft sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle, the clatter of tools, the distant whistle of wind through the trees. Logan reached for her hand, and for the first time, she didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, fitting together naturally, like the final piece of a puzzle she had spent her life trying to solve. You know, Logan murmured, I wasn't sure anyone could handle this place. But you've made it better, stronger. And I I want you here, always." Clara's chest swelled with a mixture of relief and joy. She had spent so long fleeing fear, hiding from the world, believing she had no one to trust. But Logan had proven her wrong. He had seen her for who she was, not the girl the world tried to force her to be. "I want that too," she said, her voice steady now, filled with conviction. "I want to be part of this life. With you." Logan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a protective embrace. The warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against hers, made her realize how far she had come from fear to courage, from hiding to standing tall, from loneliness to belonging. The ranch stretched endlessly around them, wild and untamed, yet full of promise. Clara looked out over the fields, the sun glinting off the fence posts, and felt the weight of the past finally lift. Here, with Logan and the life they would build together, she could finally breathe. "Looks like we've got a lot of work ahead," Logan said, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Clara laughed, squeezing his hand. "I can handle it," she said confidently. "With both hands." He grinned, the same teasing glint from their first encounter in the barn. "I like the sound of that." And together they walked across the ranch, ready to face whatever came next side by side, hand in hand. And hearts finally unafraid. Clara had found her strength, her courage, and her place. And in the arms of Logan Hawthorne she had found home.